Hello and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center video podcast. Today, our guest is Giorgi Revishvili. He's a political analyst, a former senior advisor at Georgia's National Security Council, and a Fulbright scholar now. Welcome, Giorgi.
Thanks for having me, Sergej. Good to be here.
Thank you that you found time for this interview. And you have recently published a study on the long-range strikes by Ukraine using drones on the Russia's oil facilities, in particular oil refineries, and its importance. Do you think that these long-range strikes by Ukraine against Russia's energy infrastructure is a game changer in this war?
It depends on the scale and intensity of Ukrainian strikes. We have to observe how the Ukrainian strategy will evolve in the coming months. But it certainly adds the strain on the Putin's regime because oil refineries and oil revenues in general is at heart of Russia's war economy. And by striking on those refineries, basically creates a problems and creates some sort of challenges for the regime. But it's not that something will happen overnight and it will have a devastating impact on Russian economy or Russia's war machine or Russia's military. But it's a methodical. It might create concerns for Russia for a couple of reasons. First of all, it drove a price a little bit domestically. Ukraine was capable to disrupt at least 10% of Russia's oil refineries. And some of the major oil companies had shortages, and there were some reports that they were even trying to, fill up those shortages by importing some of the oil from Belarus or Kazakhstan. So this certainly creates a tension domestically, especially in the regions where there are struggling economies and oil and gas prices are important for average Russian there. Also, it might create opportunity for Ukraine to hunt down some high level targets because if the Ukrainian drone strikes keeps going, Russians will force to defend those facilities, and those facilities are not adequately defended at the moment. So Russians might be forced to redeploy some of their air defense systems to defend and safeguard and protect those all. Not that things happening overnight. Yeah.
Indeed, and we have seen that the distance of Ukrainian strikes increases constantly. Like first year and a half, the distance was maybe like several dozens kilometers. We remember the first strike on Taganrog Air Base in summer 22, but now the distance looks to be much higher, like up to 1,200 kilometers or 900 miles. Are all these drones being launched from Ukraine's territory? Is it like quite a new development of Ukrainian striking capacities?
You're exactly right. It's impressive that Ukrainians are able to domestically produce such drones that are capable to fly over 1,000 kilometers. It's hard to say that is it launched from inside Russia or from Ukraine, but I'll probably say it is mostly launched from Ukraine because we've seen that Ukrainian drones have the capability to fly for over 900 kilometers, as you said, 1,000 kilometers. And it's very important for the Ukrainians to have such capability in their arsenal because, as we know, Ukraine is restrained and constrained to use Western provided weapons to strike targets inside Russia. So it created a challenge for the Ukrainians to have such a weapon. And drones are typically way much cheaper to produce, and it needs less technology and infrastructure than to produce like long-range missiles.
But this means that, as you already said, the drones, these winged drones, propeller engine drones, they have pretty low speed. They can be shut down even by anti-air cannons, and still they reach their targets in Russia. Does it mean that Russia's air defense is so weak?
Russia has an enormous territory, so it's hard to defend everything because none of the countries are able to defend every target inside their country, right? And we're talking about oil refineries. It's not the military installations. Those are oil refineries. So oil refineries are typically not that seriously protected as it would be like military airbase or airfield or other military installations. And as we've seen from the videos and some of the evidence on the internet and shared by the Ukrainians and other sources, there are launched several drones at the same time. So it's a concerted and concentrated effort to overwhelm if there are such systems nearby. And some of the drones will just go through their different systems because they're overwhelming and exhausting those systems.
Yes, we have seen these videos, and it is amazing that the Russian citizens they shoot videos of how drones are approaching, and we can see how low they fly, how they hit the targets, and how many people are overwhelmed by what is happening. And there are a lot of evidence of how this last mile of the attack looks like. But when we are talking about attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure, oil refineries, and other targets, can you elaborate a bit on how many of these targets are located now within the reach of Ukrainian drones in the European, mostly part of Russia?
I mean, most of the oil refineries are in the western part, as you said, western part of Russia, so European part of the Russian Federation. So, as we've seen, Ukrainians have the impressive distance of employing these drones. So, as time goes by, we don't see that the distance is a challenge for the Ukrainians at the moment because in the last couple of attacks were, as you said, like more than 100 kilometers away. So it's not the European part of Russia that's been targeted in the last attacks, but it was central and eastern part of Russia. So. But again, as you said, most of these refineries are in the western part, so it's way much easier for the Ukrainians to use several drones to target those refineries and create challenges for the Russians. So we see how the Ukrainian strategy will evolve. There has been concerns. There have been concerns in the United States, as we've seen, on the on the Ukrainian attacks on oil refineries. So I have to balance on the one hand the military strategy, but at the same time the political side of it. So we will see.
We have seen already the graphs showing that Ukraine hit not most but many significant number of the largest Russian refineries. How much are being left unhit?
I'm not sure about exactly the numbers, but I can say that at least 16% of the Russian refinery capacity has been disrupted by the Ukrainian strike. So it's pretty significant, right? And as you said, some of the top 5 or top 10 Russian refineries in Kirishi and other places have been attacked by the Ukrainians, and it is pretty challenging for the Russians because when you are under sanctions, it's pretty lengthy and cost and it's expensive to repair those refineries. So past 3 months when Ukrainians started these coordinated attacks, more than a dozen of oil refineries have been attacked. If I'm correct, if I recall correctly, it's more than 5 or 7 of them are top 10 in the capacity wise of the Russian refineries. So it is pretty significant.
And you have already mentioned that the United States, the President Biden's administration in particular, have already expressed its concerns about such attacks, pointing out that these attacks can lead to a spike of price on the world market. But is it a bit contradictory? We know that Russia almostly doesn't export any products of refiners.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things, right? We've heard two different concerns from the Americans. The one is Ukrainian strikes might spike global oil prices, and the second is that these oil refiners are civilian targets, so Ukrainians might not want to attack those. At least recommended not to attack those refineries. You are correct. Russians banned exporting for 6 months, starting in early March, and Russians are not. The Russians Russia can export crude oil, right? So those refineries are mostly domestically. For domestic markets, the oil and gas Russians need for the military and to provide on domestic markets to use gasoline and other diesel and other oil products. Disruptions on the markets might spike, as we've seen. Some of the on the global market, some of the prices went up, but it's in a short to medium term, because in the long term it will prices will balance and go to the normal levels. But we know that now it's election time in the United States, and it's pretty sensitive that oil prices are always sensitive, because average Americans, I can observe here at the United States that they are always concerned about gas prices. They always talk about gas prices, so it's sensitive. It's a political issue, but again, it is at heart in Russia's economy. As I said, it's a war economy from the money generated from oil products. So Ukraine has every right to attack, in my opinion, to attack those targets, because as I said, it has several implications for the Russians, including military, economic, and even political, because people will feel across Russia that these attacks are causing damage to domestic markets, and Ukrainians are exclusively targeting refineries. They are not targeting some other civilian infrastructure, so there should not be that concern. And on the contrary, Russians are the Russians don't have any boundaries, right? So they are attacking and pounding Ukrainians' energy infrastructure almost every day. So there is this dimension to the discussion as well. So on top of that, Ukraine have a lot of constraints, right? As I said, employing Western-provided weapons, have constraints, or at least listening concerns not to attack those refineries. So I think Ukrainians should be enabled to at least conduct the work they see fit.
And as we remember, the Allied forces in World War II had absolutely no problem with hitting Adolf Hitler's energy infrastructure, including oil refineries or the oil rigs in occupied Romania. Or during the Iraq War, the coalition, anti-Saddam coalition, has also had no concerns of hitting Iraqi oil rigs. We all remember the pictures of oil rigs burning during the Gulf Wars. So why Ukraine should be restrained from
Right.
attacking the Russia's infrastructure, being pounded by Russian missiles every day and every night. But what I wanted to ask you, in addition to that, can we expect that these strikes on Russia's oil refineries, if continued, would lead to any significant reduction of Russia's military capacities, for example, concerning production of fuel for the army?
I mean, Russians will do everything to provide, gas, jet fuel, and other oil products to their military. That's their number one priority, and they will everything to not hamper those supplies. But again, it's a long term game, right? So if you add too much strain, if you disrupt some of the supply lines, it just hampers their ability to smoothly supply some of the oil and gas and other products. It's all about creating additional strains. It's all about putting more pressure on the Russian Federation and on the Putin's regime. I don't see that in the short term it will create some of the obstacles for Russian army not having any oil products per se, like fuel. But it is having the drone attacks having cumulative effect. So to create tension, to add more pressure, to force Russians to move around their air defenses, to add more strain, and thus doing so, it will create opportunities somewhere else, and then Ukrainians might exploit those opportunities as they open.
What other soft targets related to Russia's war machine are vulnerable for Ukrainian drones?
I mean, we've seen that the Ukrainians recently are only focused on oil refineries, and that those are their primary targets. But as I said, I keep repeating myself, but putting more pressure on those refineries that are very important, are critical for the Russian economy and for the Putin's regime. It will definitely create some of the opportunities for the Ukrainians, and this could be maybe military air bases that Ukrainians try to hunt, because Russians keep using their air force to destroy basically Ukrainian economy, destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which is quite devastating for the Ukrainian state.
So we are observing now an interesting development, being deprived for months from full-scale support from the US and deprived of missiles from Germany, not mentioning like the ATACMS from the US, but also Taurus missiles from Germany. Ukraine has developed its own drone program and started to attack Russia's energy infrastructure, in particular oil refineries. We have talked to Giorgi Revishvili, who is a political analyst, a former senior advisor at Georgia's National Security Council, and a Fulbright scholar. Thank you, Giorgi, for your insights. And don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe to this channel, and to wait for new interviews.
Thank you, Sergej, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.